Millionaire gave Mistress the mansion pregnant wife, moved into the penthouse he didn't know he owned. In a world where deception hides behind dazzling wealth, James Harrington's life seemed picture perfect until a thunderous scandal tore it to shreds. A successful real estate magnate with an enviable lifestyle, James guarded secrets that could implode not just his marriage, but his entire empire. When his pregnant wife, Rebecca, discovered he had gifted a lavish mansion to his alluring mistress, Celeste Moretti, it sparked a chain of extraordinary events. Little did James realize that he also owned a penthouse one he'd long forgotten, where a spurned, desperate Rebecca would find refuge. Betrayal, heartbreak, and shocking revelations await as one man's hidden life topples into chaos. James Harrington had always been meticulous about crafting an image of success. Born to humble origins in a small Pennsylvania town, he rose to prominence through a series of shrewd real estate investments. By the age of 35, James stood at the helm of Harrington Properties, a conglomerate that owned luxury apartments, office towers, and a portfolio of properties scattered across major U.S. cities. His name was whispered in the same corridors as industrial titans, with rumors swirling that he once negotiated side by side with the likes of Warren Buffett and even Jeff Bezos for prime real estate blocks. Behind the facade of philanthropic dinners and dazzling fundraisers, James had constructed an entirely different world that few could imagine. Though he was married to the elegant and devoted Rebecca, their private interactions had grown cold. Her pregnancy, a milestone that should have brought them closer, exposed the gulf between them instead. At social galas, they stood side by side like a polished power couple. In private, they barely spoke. But the real wedge in their marriage was Celeste Moretti, James's secret mistress. A sophisticated artist from Milan, Celeste was everything Rebecca was not: free-spirited, unpredictable, and edgy. She filled James's life with a spark he had lost, or perhaps never truly found, in his marriage. And while many men in James's circle kept discreet companions, James went further. He gifted Celeste a sprawling mansion in the suburbs of Westchester County. If that bombshell ever saw light, it would ruin him, not just financially but socially. James believed he had an ironclad system of secrecy in place: lawyers, NDAs, and shadow corporations. It never occurred to him that his careful plans would begin unraveling, not from a cunning outsider, but from within his own home. Rebecca Harrington first sensed that something was off when James began returning home later than usual. A subtle tension settled between them. She was used to him working long hours. It came with the territory of his success. However, his excuses, board meetings, networking dinners, emergency property closings, began to sound oddly rehearsed. Several times, Rebecca caught him texting at strange hours, his expression turning tight when she approached. 2 months into her pregnancy, she confronted him, gently at first. James smiled dismissively, attributing his distance to the pressures of an upcoming deal in Manhattan. "I'm sorry," he said, leaning over to touch her stomach. "I promise this will all calm down soon." But it didn't. A growing sense of unease gnawed at Rebecca. She confided in her closest friend, Lucy Whitfield, a former college roommate who had always been a sounding board. Lucy suggested that Rebecca hire a private investigator if her suspicions couldn't be put to rest any other way. The idea sounded outlandish, but as the days passed and James's behavior grew even more evasive, Rebecca found herself dialing a number Lucy had provided. The investigator, a discreet woman named Grace Kim, quickly discovered what Rebecca had prayed was untrue. James was seeing another woman. Worse yet, he wasn't just meeting her in fancy hotels, he had transferred the deed of a lavish suburban estate to her name. The proof was in black and white. Celeste Moretti, sole owner of 15 Bridgewater Lane, a property worth several $1 million, courtesy of Harrington Properties. Rebecca felt her world tilt. Anger, heartbreak, and betrayal consumed her. She stared at the photographs Grace had taken James holding Celeste's hand, a sly kiss stolen in a restaurant's dim corner. All her illusions about her marriage shattered in a single, devastating moment. The day Rebecca confronted James about the mansion, she felt her heart pounding like a drum. She waited until evening, after she had carefully rehearsed her words. James walked into the living room, looking exhausted. He loosened his tie, oblivious to the emotional storm brewing just feet away. "Who is Celeste Moretti?" Rebecca's voice was calm, almost cold. James froze. His eyes narrowed, then darted with panic. He fumbled for an explanation, but found none. Seeing him speechless confirmed everything Rebecca feared. She brandished the documents Grace had provided, pictures, property records, bank transfers. With tears streaming down her cheeks, Rebecca demanded answers. "It's not what you think," James attempted, though he clearly had little to offer in defense. "I can explain." "There's nothing to explain. You gave her a mansion." She flung the pages at him, trembling with anger. "I am pregnant with your child, and you're investing millions in another woman." James's entire facade cracked. He stared at his wife, at the fluttering evidence. "Rebecca, please," he said. "Yes, I have been seeing Celeste, but—" The words hung in the air. "But what?" Rebecca shouted, her voice raw. "But it's over? But it was a mistake? But you need more time?" He couldn't answer, and in that moment, Rebecca realized their marriage was perhaps beyond saving. The betrayal felt insurmountable. She wanted to pack her bags, but Lucy reminded her that walking away empty-handed might leave her and her unborn child vulnerable. Rebecca decided she needed a plan, and ironically, that would require time. She looked at James, who stood there like a schoolboy caught stealing. "We're done," she hissed. "Don't you dare come near me tonight." Her words echoed in the vast living room, final and cold. In the days following the confrontation, Rebecca numbly carried on her routine, but her mind was a swirl of fury and confusion. She decided to consult with one of New York's top divorce attorneys. Sandra Bloom, a name whispered among the city's elite for delicate, high-stakes cases. If James had so brazenly gifted a mansion to another woman, what else was he hiding? Sandra listened intently, taking notes as Rebecca recounted the entire sordid tale. "Your situation is complicated," Sandra said, arching a brow. "James's assets are vast, and if he's transferring property like this, he might have other holdings you aren't aware of. You need to know the full scope of what he owns." Rebecca sighed, exhaustion etched across her face. "He's always kept me in the dark about his finances. I knew we had money, but I never realized just how intricate his empire is." "That's a classic tactic," Sandra said. "I see it all the time with wealthy clients. Some keep layers of shell companies, hidden bank accounts, or undervalued properties off their official records. Even though you have proof of the mansion, we need to explore the possibility there are more assets." Sandra leaned forward. "We'll hire forensic accountants, but that can take time. Meanwhile, you must remain calm. Don't tip him off about your legal strategy. If James believes you're preparing for war, he'll close ranks." Rebecca nodded. She felt both resolute and terrified. The child she was carrying deserved protection and financial security, yet the prospect of battling James's entire empire was daunting. Before leaving, Sandra gave her a reassuring pat on the arm. "We'll figure this out. Trust me." As Rebecca stepped onto the busy Manhattan sidewalk, she realized she'd opened a door to a world she never wanted to enter. James Harrington's panic began to build when he discovered Rebecca had been meeting with one of the city's top divorce attorneys. He had always feared that if Rebecca found out about Celeste, her response would be swift and unyielding. Now, with evidence in her hands and a powerful lawyer on her side, James felt cornered. Strangely, Celeste Moretti seemed unfazed by the mounting tension. When James visited her in the Westchester mansion, she lounged on a plush chaise, flipping through a glossy art magazine. "Rebecca knows," James said, pacing the room. "She's found out about us, about this place. She's threatening divorce." Celeste's dark eyes flashed with something like amusement. "You knew this day would come eventually. If anything, it came later than I expected. I need your help," James insisted. "I can't afford a scandal. My business depends on my reputation." Investors flee at the first whiff of instability. Celeste just shrugged, an elegant lift of her shoulders. "And what can I do about it, James? I'm not the one who pledged vows in front of an altar. She's not going to come after me. I'm just the mistress. Whatever illusions you told her about me, that's on you." James slumped into a nearby chair, feeling uncharacteristically helpless. In that moment, he realized Celeste wasn't just an impulsive fling. She was a strategic thinker. She had gleaned personal advantage in this arrangement and wielded it calmly. "I gave you this house," James said, almost in a plea. "And I thank you," Celeste replied, smiling. "But you must figure out how to pacify your wife. If you want to keep your empire intact, maybe you should offer her something better than what I have here." Her words echoed ominously in his mind. Something better than a mansion? The notion planted a seed, one that would lead to an unexpected revelation. Amid the legal tension and emotional toll, James found himself forced to do a full review of his company's property portfolio. He needed to know exactly which assets were in his name, which ones were in shell corporations, and which might become bargaining chips in a looming divorce. In a conference room high above Manhattan, James sat with his chief financial officer, Alan Ongwayan, who brought boxes of documents detailing the labyrinthine network of properties Harrington Properties had acquired over the years. They combed through city after city, neighborhood after neighborhood, scanning deeds and legal briefs. Seattle high-rises, a swath of land in Colorado, a partial share in a Miami condominium project. And then there was a peculiar listing that hadn't been touched in years. Penthouse 77 in the Harrington Towers, a skyscraper James had developed as an upscale residential project during the early days of his career. The property had never been sold or rented out. Alan's brow furrowed. "It shows the penthouse was retained under your personal name, but the taxes and maintenance fees have been paid automatically by the corporate account. No one's set foot there in years, as far as I can tell." James stared at the file, recalling the frenzy of that particular real estate project. "I must have forgotten about it," he said, almost in disbelief. Back then, he was so wrapped up in new developments that leaving one unit unsold might have been an oversight or a strategic tax move. A thought flickered through his mind. Could this penthouse be a way to placate Rebecca? The idea echoed Celeste's comment about offering his wife something better than the mansion. James dismissed it at first, but desperation soon clouded his judgment. Maybe, just maybe, he could persuade Rebecca to move there and quiet the growing storm. James, bolstered by his discovery, decided to make a peace offering. He found Rebecca in their ornate home library, where she was busy flipping through pregnancy guides. She seldom acknowledged his presence now, aside from what was necessary to maintain appearances for the household staff. "I need to talk to you," James began, voice measured. She looked up, eyes still red from recent tears. "What is it?" "I found an asset." He placed a folder on the mahogany desk. "A penthouse in Harrington Towers. I never sold it. You can have it free and clear in your name if you want." Rebecca stared at him in stunned silence. "You're offering me a penthouse?" Her tone was sharp. "Is that supposed to be an apology for giving a mansion to your mistress?" James's face flushed. "I know I can't undo what I did, But you're entitled to something that shows I'm willing to make this right, at least financially. Her heart twisted with bitterness. She wanted to refuse outright, but part of her remembered Lucy's advice: never walk away from what could be crucial in a future settlement. The penthouse was located in the heart of Manhattan, a prime location that could symbolize either a fresh start or an elaborate bribe. She folded her arms. You want me to move out of our home and into this penthouse while Celeste keeps the mansion? James hesitated. We can figure out the details. But yes, that might help us both remain civil. Once the baby is born, we'll decide how to move forward legally. Rebecca's mind swirled with conflicting emotions. Accepting the penthouse felt like stepping deeper into James's manipulations. Yet if she refused, she'd have nothing while the divorce battle raged. She closed her eyes, inhaled shakily, then opened them. Fine, she said. I'll take a look. That afternoon, Rebecca shared the surprising development with Lucy over herbal tea in Lucy's apartment. Lucy's reaction was immediate and firm. Don't let him buy your forgiveness with property. This is a strategic move, not an act of contrition. Rebecca sighed, cupping her mug with both hands. I know, but I also know I need leverage in this divorce. Right now, he's the millionaire with corporate lawyers. If there's a chance I can secure something for me and the baby, shouldn't I consider it? Lucy mulled it over. I get your point, but make sure you get every detail in writing. And keep Sandra informed. If you move into that penthouse, you should have it legally transferred to your name before you do so. You can't rely on James's word. Rebecca nodded. She already felt weighed down by legal complexities, and she was only a few months into her pregnancy. I just want this stress to end. I'm worried about the baby. Lucy reached across the table, placing a reassuring hand on Rebecca's arm. I'm here for you, Beck. You know that. In the back of Rebecca's mind, she suspected Lucy was right. James wasn't giving her the penthouse to be kind. He was playing a high-stakes game, trying to contain the scandal and avoid losing more than necessary. Yet the penthouse could be a practical sanctuary. Even if the rest of her marriage was collapsing, at least she wouldn't be homeless or forced back to her parents in Pennsylvania. With a heavy breath, Rebecca decided to move forward with James's offer. She'd be strategic, keep her lawyer in the loop, and never forget that every step James took likely had a hidden agenda. Rebecca's first visit to Penthouse 77 felt strangely surreal. The private elevator opened directly into the foyer, revealing floor-to-ceiling windows that framed a breathtaking skyline view. Dust motes floated in the late afternoon light, and the air smelled stale from years of neglect. It was clear no one had lived here in a long time. Her footsteps echoed on the polished marble floors. The place was both grand and empty, an opulent shell waiting to be filled. High ceilings soared overhead, and each piece of furniture, though well chosen, wore a thin layer of dust. A sense of melancholy settled over her. This penthouse symbolized everything that was wrong in her marriage: secrecy, wealth, negligence, all rolled into one. She walked past a lavish kitchen, state-of-the-art appliances still wrapped in protective film, and into the master bedroom, where floor-to-ceiling glass offered a panoramic view of Central Park. It was a far cry from the warmth of the home she once shared with James. Still, it was hers now, or so he promised. James showed up halfway through her exploration, uncharacteristically subdued. What do you think? He asked quietly. I think it's big, she replied, running a hand over a dusty countertop. He managed a humorless smile. We can have it cleaned and refurbished. Anything you need, just let me know. Rebecca nodded. There was an awkward pause. She saw a flicker of regret in his eyes, but it was overshadowed by his own anxiety and guilt. I'll talk to Sandra to finalize the paperwork, she said. Once I move in, I'd prefer you keep your distance. James just nodded, not protesting. As they left, the penthouse's silence seemed to loom behind them. In that hush, Rebecca realized this might become her fortress, both from James's betrayal and from the public gaze that would soon follow. Moving day came quicker than Rebecca anticipated. James arranged a professional cleaning crew and interior designer to refresh the penthouse. Rebecca, determined to set her own boundaries, supervised the move from a distance, ensuring she wouldn't owe him gratitude for every detail. By the end of the week, she stood among boxes in the master bedroom, the city lights reflecting off the glass walls. Despite the grandeur, her heart ached. This was her new home, but it didn't feel like one. She missed the familiarity of the old house, the kitchen, where she and James once cooked late-night meals, the living room where they laughed together at silly movies. Those memories felt tainted now, overshadowed by betrayal. The real moment of truth came when James presented the property transfer papers for her signature. Sandra scrutinized every clause, ensuring the penthouse was solely in Rebecca's name. James sat across from them in a black leather chair, checking his phone anxiously as Sandra flipped through pages. Rebecca noticed his tension. "Are you worried about Celeste?" she asked abruptly, surprising even herself. James set his phone down, not meeting her gaze. "Celeste is fine," he muttered. Sandra cleared her throat, drawing attention back to the documents. "All seems in order here. Rebecca, if you sign, the penthouse is yours, free and clear." So Rebecca signed. The pen strokes felt weighty, like carving new lines into her life script. By the time she set the pen down, James was already halfway out the door, phone pressed to his ear. She didn't miss how quickly he rushed off, presumably to handle Celeste or some crisis with Harrington Properties. As the door closed, the sense of finality hit her. She was truly alone now, alone with a baby on the way, alone in a penthouse that was both a gift and a cruel reminder of why she was there. Days turned into weeks, and slowly Rebecca adapted to her new environment. She hired a housekeeper to maintain the vast penthouse, ensuring that dust never accumulated again. The loneliness was palpable, but she tried to fill the emptiness by focusing on her pregnancy. She visited her obstetrician, went for prenatal yoga classes, and took long walks in Central Park to calm her nerves. Lucy remained a constant presence, dropping by whenever her schedule allowed. They shared meals in the panoramic dining room, sometimes speculating about how James and Celeste were spending time in that mansion. Rebecca tried not to dwell on it, but the thought crept in uninvited. Nights were the hardest. Insomnia plagued her. She found herself wandering the silent rooms at 2 a.m., the city lights below shimmering like a galaxy of false promises. She would stand by the large windows, one hand on her belly, wondering how her life had come to this junction. One evening, she decided to unpack the last of her boxes, stumbling upon old photographs of her and James' pictures from their honeymoon in Greece, snapshots of them celebrating the success of Harrington Properties' first major project. In those photos, James looked at her with genuine love. Tears blurred her vision. She felt anger, sorrow, and a profound sense of loss. How could the man in these pictures become so callous? Though she tried to steel her heart, some nights she longed for the possibility of reconciliation. Yet each time, a single image of Celeste entering her million-dollar mansion extinguished that hope. The penthouse might have been a gilded cage, but it was hers now, and she resolved to stand firm against the man who put her there. While Rebecca adjusted to her penthouse, Celeste Moretti reveled in her suburban palace. The Westchester mansion offered every opulent comfort: immaculate gardens, an indoor pool, and a staff attentive to her every whim. Celeste enjoyed hosting private dinner parties, inviting influential figures from the art world. It was her stage to flaunt the connection she had to James Harrington, though she never publicly acknowledged him as anything more than a business associate. Yet behind the scenes, Celeste was growing impatient. James's attention had waned, he visited less often, and seemed perpetually distracted. In hushed, late-night phone calls, Celeste demanded clarity about her future. Was she just a passing affair, or did James plan to make their relationship official? In a moment of frustration, she called him late one night. "You've made me look like a fool," she accused. "Everyone sees this mansion and wonders who's funding my extravagant lifestyle. But you're never here, and you won't go public. Don't you think that's humiliating?" James bristled. "I'm dealing with a crisis, Celeste. My wife is pregnant and threatening a messy divorce. I've given you everything you asked for. What else do you want?" Celeste's laughter was brittle. "You think handing me a mansion is enough? I need security, James. Not just in real estate, emotional security, social security. I'm not going to play the part of the mistress indefinitely." He hesitated, the memory of Rebecca's tearful accusations still fresh in his mind. "I need time. Maybe once the baby is born." Celeste cut him off. "Time? I've already invested months, years of my life in you. If I can't have you fully, maybe I should consider other options." Her words, menacing yet vague, left James on edge. He realized Celeste was no mere paramour. She was a formidable adversary in her own right, capable of turning the tides in a blink. Harrington Properties faced turbulence amid James's personal chaos. News leaked that the CEO was facing a potential divorce, and rumors buzzed among high-level associates. Major investors worried about James's focus and the possible repercussions if a scandal erupted publicly. During a board meeting, tension crackled in the air. Several directors, longtime associates of James's father, discreetly questioned his decision-making. James had always prided himself on being unflappable, but under mounting stress, he was making uncharacteristic errors, overlooking crucial deadlines, mixing up property deals, and snapping at staff. Alan Ungayan, the CFO, decided to address the elephant in the room. "James, we can't ignore the rumors circulating about your personal situation. Investors are asking questions. Our share values hinge on stability and trust." James bristled but kept his composure. "My personal life is under control. I appreciate your concern, but let's focus on our expansion plan in Brooklyn." A shareholder named Bernard Cooper leaned forward. "With all due respect, we can't proceed like nothing's wrong. If the divorce goes public, it'll draw media scrutiny to our operations. And if there's a mistress in the picture," James shot him a daggered look. "This meeting is about corporate strategy, not my marriage." His voice was cold, but everyone sensed the undercurrent of desperation. Sensing the tension, Alan changed the subject back to the Brooklyn project. Still, the atmosphere was tense, and it was clear the board's confidence in James was eroding. Outside the conference room, employees murmured about the friction. The rumors only grew. Some speculated James might be forced to step down or relinquish partial control to safeguard the company's reputation. As the meeting adjourned, James left the room with clenched fists. His empire was built on a carefully managed image. Now that image threatened to crumble, and the fear of losing everything consumed him. On a crisp autumn morning, Rebecca decided she wouldn't simply remain a passive victim in James's narrative. She had endured heartbreak, loneliness, and public whispers. Yet she was still the lawful wife, carrying James Harrington's heir, and she had rights. After thorough discussions with Sandra, Rebecca prepared an unexpected move, a public separation announcement that subtly laid the blame for the marriage's breakdown on James's actions. The press release was brief, but pointed. Mrs. Rebecca Harrington regrets to announce her decision to separate from Mr. James Harrington. Citing irreconcilable differences, she focuses on her health and her child's well-being. Further inquiries may be directed to her legal counsel. The statement sent ripples through New York's high society. While it omitted explicit mention of infidelity, the media had a field day insinuating the involvement of a third party. James, who had never wanted a public spectacle, found himself swarmed by reporters outside Harrington Properties headquarters. Celeste read the announcement at her Westchester mansion, smirking at how neatly Rebecca had cornered James. If the separation turned into a fierce divorce, more details might leak, and Celeste's own role would no longer be a whisper. That afternoon, Lucy dropped by the penthouse with flowers and a warm smile. "You've taken a bold step," Lucy told Rebecca. "No one can say you're afraid to stand up for yourself." Rebecca managed a tired smile. "It's not about vengeance. I'm just tired of feeling helpless. The world should know I'm done tolerating his betrayals." Deep down, a part of her felt a pang of guilt. Despite everything, she once loved James deeply. Yet she also recognized that she needed to protect her child and reclaim her dignity. And if a public statement was what it took, so be it. Just past midnight, the shrill ring of Rebecca's penthouse doorbell interrupted her restless sleep. Alarmed, she slipped on a robe and peered through the security camera display. It was James. He looked disheveled, his eyes tinged with desperation. Against her better judgment, she buzzed him in. He stepped into the foyer, the faint scent of whiskey clinging to his expensive suit. His usual composed demeanor was nowhere to be found. "Rebecca," he began, voice strained. "We need to talk." She crossed her arms, bracing herself. "It's late. Whatever you have to say, I'm sure it can wait." He ran a hand through his hair. "The company is in trouble. The board's considering forcing me out if I don't get my personal affairs under control. They believe the negative press could ruin us." She studied him. His once confident posture sagged. The weight of impending disaster loomed over him. "I'm sorry your actions have consequences," she said, her voice measured. "But I'm not here to save your reputation." James's expression flashed with indignation, quickly replaced by pleading. "Rebecca, let's negotiate a settlement, quietly. If we continue like this, everything I've built will collapse." He paused, eyes flicking to her pregnant belly. "Everything we've built." She felt a surge of anger, a reminder of the nights she spent crying over his betrayal. "We built nothing together," she hissed. "Not if you're playing house with Celeste on the side." James clenched his jaw. "I'm willing to make amends, financially at least. Whatever you want, name your price. Just let me preserve my name." Rebecca stared at him for a long moment. "We'll discuss terms with Sandra present. Until then, James, leave." He hesitated, then nodded, slinking back to the elevator. The door slid shut, and Rebecca was left trembling in the aftermath of old pain and new resolve. As James's world tilted, Celeste decided it was time to push her advantage. She summoned him to the Westchester mansion with a curt phone call that brooked no refusal. When James arrived, she greeted him in a sleek dress, her expression businesslike. "I've been patient," Celeste began, leading him to a private drawing room filled with contemporary art. "I kept quiet for your sake, but I see how precarious your position is now." James's voice was tired. "What do you want?" She glanced around the opulent room before settling her gaze on him. "If you divorce Rebecca, I want assurance that you'll come out of it financially intact. And once you're free, I want to be acknowledged not as a mistress, but as your partner." His eyes flickered with conflict. "I'm trying to negotiate a settlement that protects my assets, Celeste. But there's no guarantee. Rebecca has a strong case, and the board is spooked." Celeste's tone hardened. "Then you need to fight harder. I won't remain your dirty secret forever. And if you can't promise me that future, maybe I'll speak to the press myself. Tell them about the lavish gifts, the timeline of our relationship. That would be quite the scandal." James realized she was blackmailing him. His earlier illusions about their passion had shattered into the cold reality of transaction. "You're threatening me." "I'm giving you a choice," Celeste corrected. "Marry me eventually or lose everything you hold dear. Because if I open my mouth, the damage will be irreversible." James felt a surge of panic. He trapped himself with an angry wife on one side and a manipulative mistress on the other. As Celeste's ultimatum hung in the air, he found himself wondering if he was destined to lose, no matter which path he took. While James spiraled deeper into turmoil, Rebecca found a moment of respite in an unlikely place, the penthouse's rooftop terrace. It was a hidden space, accessible by a narrow staircase that led to a serene outdoor garden. Apparently, the original design included a private oasis, a sky-high patch of greenery with potted plants, a small fountain, and a wooden bench overlooking the city. One afternoon, exhausted by legal meetings and haunted by betrayal, Rebecca stumbled upon that rooftop door. Stepping outside, she felt the sun warm her skin. The hush of the terrace offered a rare escape from the incessant city noise. As she sat on the bench, a gentle breeze ruffled her hair, and her unborn child kicked lightly. She placed a hand on her stomach, tears pricking her eyes. In that moment, she felt a flutter of hope. Life grew inside her, a reminder that she had a future outside the tangled web of James's deceptions. She began writing in a small journal advice from her therapist to process her emotions. Penning thoughts and fears, she also detailed her aspirations for her child, a life filled with stability, kindness, and love. Each word felt like a promise she was making, not only to her unborn baby, but to herself. Gradually, she realized that no matter how the divorce played out, she was stronger than she had once believed. Yes, she'd been devastated, but she had taken steps to protect herself, to carve out a safe space in a chaotic storm. This rooftop garden became her sanctuary, an emblem of new beginnings, perched high above old regrets. For the first time in months, she inhaled a lungful of hope. She was far from healed, but at least she had clarity. Whether she ended up with half of James's empire or none of it, she would survive, and so would her child. The next round of divorce talks took place in Sandra's luxurious midtown office. James arrived with his own legal team, a phalanx of stern-faced attorneys determined to protect Harrington properties. Rebecca, composed in a simple black dress, sat opposite him, her expression unreadable. Sandra began by laying out their terms: substantial child support, a lump sum settlement, and ongoing stake in Harrington Properties' profits to ensure the child's future. James's lawyers bristled, countering with more modest figures, citing potential business liabilities. Rebecca sat quietly for most of the back and forth, but when the discussion turned to her living situation post-divorce, she spoke up. "I'm staying in the penthouse," she declared, surprising James's lawyers. "James gifted it to me, and I have the paperwork to prove it's in my name." She looked at James. "I expect no contest on that." James gave a curt nod. "The penthouse is yours, but let's be reasonable about the rest. My company's facing a crisis, and a massive settlement could sink it." Rebecca fixed him with a penetrating stare. "Your company's crisis is your own doing." Tense silence followed. Sandra pressed forward, uncompromising. The negotiating teams volleyed offers and counteroffers like tennis players in a high-stakes match. Hours ticked by, and the city skyline shifted from day to dusk outside the office windows. By the time they adjourned, both sides had a tentative framework. James would keep control of Harrington Properties, but Rebecca would secure a hefty financial settlement, plus a guaranteed trust fund for the child. The details were still in flux, but the skeleton of an agreement began to emerge. Outside the office, Rebecca exhaled, shoulders heavy. The war wasn't over, but a temporary ceasefire had been declared. She left feeling equal parts sorrow and relief, wondering if she was bartering away the last remnants of her old life. Rebecca had just settled onto her plush sofa in the penthouse's living room, her phone resting nearby on a coffee table stacked with pregnancy magazines. She was sipping a cup of chamomile tea when a sharp buzz startled her. The text was from Lucy. "Have you seen the news?" With a quick tap, Rebecca opened the link Lucy had sent. Her heart pounded as a notorious celebrity gossip website loaded on her phone screen. The headline blasted in bold letters: James Harrington's double life, secret mansion for Mistress, lavish yachts, and shocking betrayals. Beneath it appeared a series of incriminating photos, grainy but unmistakable. In one picture, James held Celeste's hand while boarding a private yacht in the Caribbean. Another showed them stepping out of a sleek car late at night, entering an upscale hotel. The article even included what looked like scanned financial records, detailing the massive sums James had funneled into Celeste's lifestyle. Rebecca's tea slipped from her hands, splashing onto the polished floor. She read with a mixture of revulsion and grim vindication, her stomach clenched with anxiety. The story implied James had been funneling company funds into personal indulgences for Celeste. Though Rebecca had known about the affair and the mansion, these specifics painted an even darker picture. The scale of deceit seemed endless. Before she could even gather her thoughts, her phone buzzed again, calls, texts, voicemails piling up. Former acquaintances, distant relatives, even a couple of journalists who somehow had her personal number. They all wanted her reaction, her statement, her version of the scandal unfolding in real time. The tabloids had always thrived on the missteps of the wealthy, but this, it seemed, was the biggest fish they had caught in months. Meanwhile, at Harrington Properties headquarters, pandemonium reigned. James, who had come in early to prepare for a critical investor meeting, was met with stunned stares and hushed whispers the moment he stepped into the sleek, glass-walled lobby. Staff members darted around, frantic, phones clutched to their ears. A few employees openly gawked at him as he passed, their gazes teeming with pity or curiosity. "Mr. Harrington, you might want to see this," said Alan Guion, his CFO, whose normally calm demeanor had evaporated. Alan ushered James into a corner office and shut the door. He pulled out his tablet and showed James the scathing article. James's face turned ashen as he scrolled through each line. His jaw tightened at the photographic evidence. Some shots he remembered distinctly, others he'd thought safely hidden from the public eye. How? Who could have leaked this? James's voice shook with rage and fear. It felt as though the very foundation he had built his company, his reputation, his carefully orchestrated personal life, was crumbling beneath him. Alan sighed. "No clue yet. But this is bad, James. We have calls from board members, investors, media. Everyone's demanding answers. Some shareholders are threatening to file suits if this jeopardizes stock prices." James sank into a chair, burying his face in his hands. Even at his worst moments, he had never envisioned such a public debacle. He was the brilliant deal-maker who outmaneuvered rivals and turned derelict buildings into profitable ventures. Yet now, any illusions of control were gone. All that remained was chaos. By midday, the board convened an emergency meeting in the executive conference room. The hush was palpable as James entered. Bernard Cooper, a prominent shareholder, did not mince words. "James, these allegations, if they prove true, are catastrophic. Our stock value depends on public trust. With rumors of you using corporate funds for personal matters, that trust evaporates." "I can handle this," James insisted, trying to reclaim his authoritative tone. "We'll do an internal audit. Show that—" "It's too late for half measures," Bernard cut in. "The damage is done. If we don't show decisive action, we'll lose more than just the stock price. We could lose future investors, partnerships, everything." James wanted to protest, but the weight of the stares around the table silenced him. Each board member seemed to radiate disapproval. They had once revered him as a visionary CEO. Now they saw only a reckless man tangled in scandal. In a slow, somber vote, the board decided James must take an indefinite leave of absence. They would announce it immediately, in hopes of placating investors. When the news broke that afternoon, Rebecca learned of it from a headline scrolling across her television screen. "James Harrington steps down amid scandal, company scrambles to reassure investors." She felt an odd mix of relief and heartbreak. For all his faults, James had been at the helm of Harrington Properties for years. It was his life's work, the source of his pride. Now that it was slipping away, she couldn't help but feel a pang of empathy. Yet she reminded herself that James had chosen this path through every lie and secret. She also knew the media frenzy was far from over. Paparazzi were already lurking outside Harrington Towers, hoping for a glimpse or a quote. In fact, the doorman had informed her that morning about photographers camped on the sidewalk. She swiftly decided to hire a private security detail, making sure no one could ambush her with questions or invade her privacy inside the building. Lucy came by later that evening, breathless from dodging cameras in the lobby. "The press is going crazy," she said, dropping her purse onto a chair. "They're all speculating on who leaked the story. Some say it might be Celeste herself, hungry for publicity or trying to manipulate James. Others think it could be someone on the board who wanted him out." Rebecca wrapped a shawl around her shoulders, the penthouse's air conditioning suddenly feeling too cold. "I don't know, Lucy. Either way, I'm just relieved it's out now. I can't stand living in half-truths anymore." Lucy's expression softened with concern. "Are you sure you're okay? This is a lot." Rebecca inhaled a shaky breath, placing a hand protectively over her belly. "It's terrifying, but I have to stay strong, for me and for my baby." James, desperate to contain the fallout, tried calling Rebecca several times that day. Each time she let it go to voicemail. She had nothing new to say to him, and she had no desire to get further entangled in his web of apologies and excuses. She remembered too vividly the night she spent weeping, her pregnancy overshadowed by heartbreak and betrayal. Let him face the consequences alone. By the next morning, tabloids and reputable newspapers alike carried the saga on their front pages. There were op-eds analyzing the moral pitfalls of powerful men, debates on talk shows about whether Celeste was a cunning gold digger or a victim of James's manipulation. All the public scrutiny only fueled more scrutiny. Journalists dug deeper into Harrington Properties, questioning its finances and ethics. Even philanthropic events James had previously headlined began distancing themselves from the name Harrington. Celeste, for her part, found herself under siege at the Westchester mansion. Paparazzi swarmed the gates, camera flashes illuminating the ornate driveway at all hours. Some reports claimed she'd fled the country, others insisted she was hiding inside, orchestrating her next move. Her once lavish parties fell silent, replaced by the constant hum of gossip in the local neighborhoods. Despite the personal turmoil, Rebecca soon realized the scandal had a surprising side effect on her own position. It gave her undeniable leverage in the final divorce negotiations. With James's public image in tatters, the last thing he needed was a vicious court battle. Ironically, the tabloid expose might ensure that Rebecca secured the financial support and security she'd been fighting for all along. Yet, no amount of settlement money could fully heal the betrayal or the sense of lost innocence. Each new headline was like salt on an open wound, reminding Rebecca of a time when she once believed James was a faithful partner. The heartbreak was real. Still, in the swirl of paparazzi lights and ringing phones, she reminded herself that her focus now was on the life growing inside her. Above all, Chapter 19 of the Harrington saga marked a point of no return. James's carefully constructed world had collapsed under the weight of its secrets. There would be no easy path forward. And for Rebecca, the public revelation, painful though it was, held the seeds of an uncertain but undeniably liberating future. In the aftermath of the expose, life changed irrevocably for all involved. James Harrington was forced to resign as CEO, replaced by a senior board member who promised to restore the firm's reputation. James retreated to a private villa in Europe for several weeks, supposedly to recover, though rumors hinted he was still entangled with Celeste. Rebecca, meanwhile, stayed in the penthouse, forging a new path. She finalized the divorce settlement, which granted her a substantial but not obscene amount of Harrington property stock, ensuring long-term financial security for her child. She hired a reputable PR consultant to release a statement emphasizing her desire to focus on motherhood and distance herself from any more public drama. In a final twist, Celeste Moretti disappeared from the public eye. Though many speculated she orchestrated the leak, no solid proof ever emerged. Gossip columns claimed she was spotted in Switzerland, Paris or Rome, presumably on James's dime, but she never again basked in the same spotlight that once surrounded her. As Rebecca's due date approached, she prepared a serene nursery in the penthouse's second bedroom. Pale curtains draped the windows, and soft lullabies played on a new sound system. A renewed sense of calm suffused the once empty space, now filled with the promise of new life. Lucy visited often, delighted at each step of the baby's preparation. Finally, on a crisp morning filled with golden sunlight, Rebecca went into labor. She delivered a healthy baby girl after several hours of grueling effort and tears. Holding the infant in her arms, she felt an indescribable flood of love and relief. All the betrayal, the heartbreak, the drama of the past months seemed distant compared to the tiny life she cradled. She named the baby Hope, a tribute to the journey that carried her from the depths of despair to this joyous moment. In that single heartbeat, Rebecca realized that while her life had not turned out as planned, it held a promise far greater than any mansion or penthouse could offer. A fresh start, forged through resilience, love, and the unwavering will to endure. Such ends the scandalous tale of James Harrington, whose riches couldn't shield him from the price of deceit, Celeste Moretti, who leveraged her allure into a high-stakes gamble, and Rebecca Harrington, who uncovered both her husband's betrayal and her own inner strength. Though heartbreak and anger once defined her life, Rebecca found in her penthouse not merely a gilded cage, but a fortress from which she reclaimed her power. In the end, the legacy left to her daughter would not be James's monetary empire, but the unbreakable spirit of a mother determined to protect and guide her child. If you found yourself riveted by this roller coaster of betrayal, luxury, and personal triumph, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Together, we can explore more stories of broken promises, shattered illusions, and the redemptive power of hope. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.